Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where it's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else expects from us. People have their opinions, their plans, their assumptions about how we should live, what we should do, and who we should become. And for too long, many of us have lived in that trap, working to please others, trying to gain approval, hoping that if we do everything right, maybe we'll finally be good enough in someone else's eyes. But let me tell you something, you weren't created to live your life for other people. You were created with a purpose, a calling, and a unique path that no one else can walk but you. There comes a point when you have to stop letting people define you and start letting God refine you. That means letting go of the need to be liked, to fit in, to impress, and to perform. You see, when you work for people, you'll always be exhausted, because people are never fully satisfied. You can give and give and give, and someone will still find fault. But when you begin to work for the person God made you to be, when you rise each day with the intent to walk in truth, grow in character, and fulfill the calling planted deep inside you, now you're living in freedom. You're not here to meet every need, fix every problem, or carry every burden. You're not responsible for being everything to everyone. You are responsible for being faithful to the gifts and talents placed inside of you. It's time to stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "Am I being true to who I'm meant to be?" You don't need 10 people cheering for you to know you're on the right path. Sometimes you'll walk alone for a while before others see what God is doing in you. That's okay. Some of your greatest growth will happen in the quiet, in the moments no one sees, where your character is being built, not for applause, but for purpose. When you work for yourself, when you take ownership of your life, your choices, your mindset, you start stepping into a different kind of power. It's not prideful, it's responsible. It says, "I may not have had the best start. I may have been overlooked, underestimated, and misunderstood, but I will not let that define my finish." You get up not to prove something to someone else, but to fulfill the potential inside of you. That's the kind of work that brings peace. That's the kind of effort that builds legacy. Some people may not understand your decisions. They may call you selfish for setting boundaries, or arrogant for believing you're made for more. But don't let that distract you. Stay focused. When you live for others, you wear masks, you shrink back, you become a version of yourself that was never meant to last. But when you live in alignment with your calling, when you work to become the best version of yourself for the sake of growth, for the glory of God, and for the purpose you've been given, now you're finally free. You don't need permission to live with purpose. You don't need validation to believe in yourself. You don't have to wait for someone else to approve your journey. Take the step, own the vision, invest in your growth. Learn, fail, get back up, and keep going. Not because you owe it to someone else, but because you owe it to yourself to live fully, boldly, and without apology. You've got one life. Don't spend it living someone else's dream. Don't waste it on fear, comparison, or approval chasing. Work for yourself, grow for yourself, heal for yourself, and live in a way that, when you look back, you'll be proud. Not because others clapped, but because you didn't give up on who you were created to be. We live in a culture where approval is almost like a currency. From the time we're young, we're trained to seek it from parents, teachers, peers, bosses, even strangers online. And while there's nothing wrong with affirmation or encouragement, something goes wrong when our entire sense of worth is tied to how others respond to us. It's exhausting trying to be everything for everyone. You put on the right smile, say the right thing, play the part that's expected, and you keep hoping that if you get it just right, someone will finally say you're enough. But here's the truth. No amount of human approval can fill the emptiness that comes from not living in your purpose. Living for approval is a trap. It's subtle and deceptive because it feels good in the moment. Someone compliments you, praises you, validates your choices, and for a short while you feel seen. But the problem is that the more you feed on approval, the more you need it. And when it doesn't come, you feel confused, insecure, or even worthless. It becomes a cycle that chains you to the opinions of people who probably aren't even thinking about you as much as you think they are. You give away your power to every comment, every facial expression, every bit of feedback, good or bad, and eventually you lose sight of who you really are. That's why at some point you have to decide to break the cycle. You have to say, I'm not living for likes, applause, or recognition anymore. I'm living for truth. I'm living in alignment with the person I was created to be. And that shift isn't always easy. Because when you stop performing for others, you might not get the same kind of attention you're used to. Some people might misunderstand you. Some might criticize you. Some might even walk away. But what you gain is far more powerful: peace. When you stop chasing approval, you start walking in purpose. When you stop asking for permission, you finally give yourself the freedom to become who you truly are. There's something powerful that happens when you realize you don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need to explain yourself to people who aren't invested in your growth. You don't need to shrink your dreams to make others comfortable. That's not rebellion, that's wisdom, that's maturity, and that's freedom. Living with purpose means choosing integrity over popularity. It means waking up each day not to please a crowd, but to be faithful to your values, your vision, and your calling. It means saying, even if no one claps, I'll still keep going. Even if no one understands, I'll still walk this path, because I know this is what I was made for. When you live like that, something inside you shifts. You become more focused, more confident, and more content. You stop comparing your journey to others because you're too busy running your own race. You stop waiting for a green light from others and start moving forward because you trust the direction you're headed in. And that's where the real joy is, not in being everything to everyone, but in being whole and honest with yourself. You don't need to post every victory for it to be valid. You don't need a round of applause for every decision you make. Some of your best moments will be the ones no one sees. The quiet decisions to keep going when it's hard, the silent prayers when you feel weak, the internal wins that no one else can measure. Those are the things that build real strength. Those are the things that make you unshakable. Living with purpose rather than approval also means embracing the fact that not everyone will like you, and that's okay. Jesus was perfect, and people still rejected him. So why do we think we need to be universally accepted? If your goal is to never upset anyone, you'll end up living small, staying quiet, and hiding your light. But if your goal is to live truthfully and boldly, you'll have to make peace with being misunderstood. You'll have to learn to keep moving even when the crowd doesn't cheer, and that takes courage, but the reward is worth it. Approval fades, but purpose lasts. People change their minds. They love you one day and question you the next. If your identity is tied to their opinion, you'll be on an emotional roller coaster every day of your life. But when your identity is rooted in who you are and who you're becoming, you're grounded. You're steady. You don't need to hustle for attention or prove your worth. You already know who you are, and that's more powerful than anything anyone else can say about you. So choose purpose. Choose to show up for yourself. Choose to live your life in a way that's aligned with your values, not someone else's expectations. You don't need their permission to be whole. You don't need their approval to be powerful. The only one you need to answer to is the person you're becoming. And that's enough. Taking ownership of your life is one of the most empowering things you'll ever do. It doesn't mean you won't have setbacks. It doesn't mean you won't struggle. And it definitely doesn't mean that everything will go according to plan. But it does mean that you stop waiting for someone to come save you. It means you stop blaming other people for where you are or how you feel. It means you recognize, maybe for the first time, that your growth is your responsibility and no one is going to do it for you. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that someone else is going to come along and fix things. Maybe you think, if I just get the right job, then I'll be motivated. If I just find the right relationship, then I'll be happy. If someone would just help me, then I could finally move forward. And while support is important and encouragement is a gift, the truth is that nobody else can do your growing for you. No one can make the choices that only you can make. No one can change your mindset, shift your habits, or develop your character. That's on you, you see. Maturity isn't just about age. It's about taking responsibility. It's about saying, no matter what has happened to me, I'm not going to stay stuck in it. I may not have chosen the pain, but I can choose how I respond. I may not have had control over the beginning of my story, but I have a say in how this next chapter goes. That kind of mindset is rare, but it's powerful. Because the moment you stop handing your power to your past, to other people, or to your circumstances, is the moment you start to grow. Growth doesn't happen by accident. You don't just wake up one day and become strong, wise, or emotionally healthy. It takes intention, it takes work, and sometimes it takes facing parts of yourself that you'd rather avoid. Maybe it's a habit you've used to cope with disappointment. Maybe it's a way of thinking that keeps sabotaging your progress. Maybe it's the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, or even the fear of success. Whatever it is, you won't overcome it by ignoring it. You have to confront it, and when you do, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. There is something sacred about being able to look at your life honestly and say, I need to grow here. That's not defeat. That's wisdom, and wisdom always invites change. It says, I'm not going to keep doing what I've always done if it's not getting me where I want to go. It's about refusing to settle for just surviving when you know you were made to thrive. That shift from victim to victor, from reactive to intentional, changes everything. Now, this doesn't mean you won't need help along the way. We all need teachers, mentors, friends, and encouragers. But there's a difference between asking for guidance and expecting someone to carry you. No one else can give you the discipline to get up when you don't feel like it. No one else can force you to forgive, to heal, or to break that cycle. Those are decisions only you can make, and the more you make them, the more powerful you become. There's freedom in realizing that the person you are today doesn't have to be the person you stay. You're not stuck. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not disqualified. You're in process. And just because it's hard doesn't mean you're failing. Growth hurts sometimes. Letting go of old mindsets, old habits, old relationships. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because every time you choose to grow instead of stay comfortable, you move closer to the person you're meant to be. Sometimes we delay growth because we're waiting for the perfect time. We think, I'll start when things settle down, when I have more time, when I feel more confident. But growth doesn't wait for your convenience. It shows up in the middle of chaos, in the middle of discomfort, and says, are you willing to take a step even if you're scared? Because that's what real growth looks like. Not giant leaps, but small, consistent decisions made every single day. It's waking up and saying, I choose to try again today. I choose to believe again. I choose to grow. You don't need to wait for a sign. You don't need to wait for someone to give you permission. If you know deep down that there's more for you, then start. Start messy, start small, but start. And when you do, you'll begin to build something stronger than motivation. You'll build momentum, and momentum creates transformation. Because the more you see yourself grow, the more you'll believe that change is possible. And that belief will carry you through the days when you feel like giving up. So take ownership. Own your habits. Own your attitude. Own your decisions, not from a place of guilt, but from a place of power. Because when you work for yourself, when you grow for yourself, you take back the pen. You stop letting your story be written by people who don't know your worth. You become the author of a new chapter. One filled with purpose, progress, and powerful growth. Not because anyone else handed it to you, but because you did the work, you made the choice, and you kept going. Trying to live up to others' expectations can feel like an endless marathon where the finish line keeps moving. When you live to please people, you can exhaust yourself emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. yet never feel fulfilled. It doesn't matter how hard you try. There will always be someone who isn't impressed, someone who doesn't get it, or someone who thinks you should be doing things differently. That's the danger of working for approval. It's never enough. It's always temporary, and it wears you down over time. But when you begin to work for purpose instead, something beautiful happens. You start to breathe again. You stop trying to be everything to everyone and finally become who you're meant to be. Purpose brings peace because it anchors you. It gives meaning to your actions, clarity to your decisions, and strength in your struggles. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect or that obstacles disappear, but it means your energy is being spent in the right direction. Working for others' praise is like chasing shadows. You may catch a moment of satisfaction when someone compliments you or applauds your work. But what happens when the applause fades? What happens when no one sees the effort you're putting in? If you're only working for external validation, those silent seasons can feel unbearable. You might even begin to doubt your worth or question your path. That's why you need a deeper reason for doing what you do. Something that doesn't fluctuate with people's opinions. Purpose is steady. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers in your soul and says, "Keep going." It reminds you that you're building something that matters, even when it's hard. It helps you push through the early mornings, the long nights, the seasons of silence when it feels like nothing is changing. Purpose doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it looks like discipline, like sacrifice, like repetition. But underneath it all, there's a quiet confidence that says, this matters. When you begin to live and work from that place of inner purpose, you no longer need constant affirmation to feel secure. You still appreciate encouragement, but you're not dependent on it. You learn how to validate yourself. You learn how to look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of the person I'm becoming. You don't need the spotlight to know your worth. You don't need applause to keep moving forward. You understand that the most important parts of your journey are the ones no one else sees. Sometimes, people won't understand your purpose, especially if it doesn't fit into their expectations or comfort zones. That's okay. Not everyone needs to understand your path. It wasn't made for them. What matters is that you stay faithful to what's inside of you. If you keep trying to explain your purpose to people who are not meant to walk it with you, you'll only wear yourself out. Instead, let your growth speak for itself. Let your consistency tell the story. Over time, fruit always proves the root. Now, that doesn't mean you shut people out or become defensive when challenged. But it does mean you stop making your decisions based on how others will perceive you. It means you listen to your inner compass more than the noise around you. Because the more you listen to purpose, the less power fear has over you. Fear will tell you to play small, to avoid criticism, to stay in the comfort zone. But purpose will push you to grow. It will call you to new levels. It will ask you to trust, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Peace doesn't come from doing what's expected. It comes from doing what's right. For you, your soul, your calling. And that might mean saying no to good things so you can say yes to the best things. It might mean walking alone for a while. It might mean making decisions that other people don't agree with. But if those choices keep you aligned with your purpose, then they're worth it. When you work for purpose, your motivation changes. You're not hustling for praise. You're building with intention. You're not grinding to impress others. You're growing to become the person you're created to be. Your identity is no longer tied to performance but to progress. And that shift makes all the difference. You begin to work with a calm heart, not a frantic one. You show up with clarity instead of confusion. You make decisions with confidence instead of fear. Purpose brings peace because it removes the pressure to perform. It gives you permission to rest. It reminds you that you're already enough. You're not working to earn your worth. You're working because you know you already have it. That's a whole different mindset. That's where joy lives. That's where peace stays. So while approval may feel good in the moment, it will never sustain you. It fades. It shifts. It depends on things outside of your control. But purpose carries you. Purpose heals you. Purpose grounds you when life feels unstable. And when you start living and working from that place, you won't just look successful. You'll feel fulfilled. You'll be at peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you're finally being true to yourself. There is something incredibly liberating about realizing that you don't need to perform for people in order to be valuable. You don't need to chase after applause or rely on the opinions of others to confirm who you are. That kind of freedom comes when you discover that your true worth isn't based on how others see you, but on how aligned you are with who you were created to be. The world is loud with opinions, with standards, with voices telling you how to look, how to act, what to do, and what not to do. If you let those voices guide your life, you'll always be adjusting, bending, shrinking, trying to keep everyone happy. And in the process, you'll lose the sound of your own voice. When you live for applause, your life becomes like a stage. You feel the pressure to perform, to impress, to always look like you've got it all together. You measure your value by the number of compliments you receive, the likes you get, or the approval you gain. But applause doesn't last. It fades. It's fickle. One day people love you, the next day they don't. One moment you're praised, the next you're questioned. And if your identity is attached to that approval, then you're constantly at the mercy of it. That's no way to live, not when you were made to walk with boldness and peace. Alignment, on the other hand, is steady. Alignment is not about how loud the applause is. It's about how right the direction is. It's when your actions line up with your values, when your thoughts agree with your purpose, when your habits reflect the person you're becoming, not the person others expect you to be. And the beautiful thing about living in alignment is that even when no one's watching, you still have peace. Even when no one cheers for you, you're still fulfilled. Because deep down, you know you're doing what you were meant to do. You know you're walking in integrity. The truth is, people pleasing will wear you out. It will steal your time, your energy, and your joy. You'll find yourself saying yes to things you don't want, tolerating things you know aren't healthy, and trying to keep the peace while losing your own in the process. But when you start making decisions from a place of alignment instead of anxiety, everything shifts. You start saying yes to things that build you. You learn to say no without guilt. You begin to trust your discernment instead of doubting yourself at every turn. And that kind of clarity gives you confidence, not the kind that shows off, but the kind that stands firm. Confidence from alignment is different from confidence that depends on praise. Praise-based confidence is shallow. It's fragile. It breaks the moment criticism comes. But when your confidence comes from living true to your values and your purpose, it's rooted. It doesn't shake every time someone disagrees with you. It doesn't crumble just because someone doesn't like your choices. You can listen to feedback without being destroyed by it. You can grow without being defined by other people's expectations. The longer you walk in alignment, the more comfortable you become with silence, with not needing constant approval, with not needing to explain yourself all the time. You learn how to rest in your decisions. You learn how to validate your own progress. You become less reactive and more centered. And ironically, that's when people begin to notice. That's when your life starts to carry weight. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your quiet consistency speaks for itself. When you're aligned with your purpose, even your struggles feel different. You can face hard seasons with peace because you know they're part of your growth. You don't waste time pretending anymore. You don't have to act like you're okay when you're not. You don't have to smile to keep others comfortable while you're breaking inside. You can be honest. You can be real. And that realness doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful because you're not hiding. You're not pretending. You're walking in truth. And truth is where strength lies. Living for applause can become an addiction if you're not careful. You start to depend on the rush of being recognized, the satisfaction of being accepted, the ease of being admired. But the danger is that it trains you to keep performing. You start molding yourself into what people want instead of who you are. And eventually, you don't recognize yourself anymore. But when you stop chasing the stage and start cultivating alignment, you return to yourself. You come home to your values. You rediscover your voice. And that's when you begin to live with real authenticity. This kind of life doesn't come from trying to be better than others or from being perfect. It comes from being honest about who you are and what you're called to do. It comes from choosing to live a life that reflects your core, your heart, your beliefs, your inner convictions. And when your inner world lines up with your outer actions, that's alignment. That's peace. That's freedom. You don't need to prove your worth. You already have it. You don't need to impress everyone. The right people will see you. The right doors will open. The right opportunities will find you when you live with integrity and purpose. So stop performing. Start aligning. Let your life reflect your truth, not the noise. Let your confidence come from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do, even if no one else sees it yet. Growth isn't always loud. In fact, some of the most powerful growth happens in silence, when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, and when there's no validation coming from the outside. It happens in the quiet decisions, in the private disciplines, in the lonely choices to keep going when quitting would be easier. There's a kind of growth that doesn't show up on the surface right away, but it's deep, it's strong, and it's lasting. It's the kind of growth that prepares you for what's coming, even if you can't see it yet. The world is obsessed with visibility. We're constantly encouraged to show our progress, post the journey, and share every win. And while it's beautiful to celebrate growth publicly, real maturity happens when you don't need that recognition to keep going. When you can keep becoming, keep building, and keep becoming better, not for attention, but for alignment. Not to prove something, but because something inside you knows you're made for more. That's where the transformation happens. Some of your most important growth will happen in hidden seasons. These are the seasons where you feel unseen, overlooked, or forgotten. It can be tempting to think those times are wasted, but they're not. Those are often the seasons where your roots grow deep, where your character is shaped, where your endurance is built. It's where you learn discipline without applause, where you show up when no one else knows how hard it is. And those moments, those unseen choices, are the ones that will carry you when the platform comes, when the responsibility increases, and when the weight of your calling gets heavier. See, public growth is exciting, but private growth is essential. It's easy to get addicted to being seen, to having your progress affirmed by others. But if you need an audience to stay motivated, your drive will always depend on people. And people are unpredictable. Sometimes they'll cheer for you. Sometimes they'll question you. Sometimes they'll ignore you altogether. But when your motivation comes from within, when it's rooted in your values, your vision, and your calling, you become unstoppable. And not flashy, not perfect, but grounded, focused, and unshakable. There's a kind of strength that comes only from silence, from walking through seasons where you have to encourage yourself, from pushing through when your efforts seem to go unnoticed, from staying committed when no one else understands why you're doing what you're doing. That strength isn't built overnight, but it lasts. It stays with you when life gets hard. It reminds you who you are when doubt creeps in. It carries you through transition, rejection, and even failure. Because it's not built on the fragile foundation of applause, it's built on purpose. If you want to grow into the person you were created to be, you have to stop waiting for someone else to recognize your value. Stop waiting for someone to tell you you're good enough. Stop waiting for the perfect timing, the ideal audience, or the right circumstances. Start now, grow now, even if no one sees it, even if no one says anything, even if it feels like you're walking alone. Some of the greatest leaders, creators, and visionaries started in places where no one saw them. They developed their gifts in quiet. They practiced behind the scenes. They built consistency in obscurity. And when the moment came for them to step forward, they were ready, not because of a spotlight, but because of what they had become in secret. Growth that lasts doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it looks like getting up early to pray or reflect when no one else is awake. Sometimes it looks like showing up to your responsibilities even when you're discouraged. Sometimes it looks like doing the right thing when no one's there to see it. It's those invisible acts of integrity that shape your character. Those decisions don't go viral. They don't come with instant gratification. But over time, they create a life you can be proud of, a life built on depth, not just display. And you know what's beautiful? When your growth comes from a real place, it blesses others even more. You show up more present, more grounded, more whole. You're not performing anymore. You're just being who you truly are. And that kind of authenticity is rare. People can feel it. They may not always understand it, but they recognize the peace and power that come from someone who doesn't need the spotlight to feel worthy. Someone who's grown so deeply in private that public validation is no longer necessary for them to move forward. You don't have to announce every step. You don't have to prove every breakthrough. Some things are sacred. Some things are meant just for you and God. Your healing, your journey, your transformation. Let it be enough that you are changing, even if no one else claps for it. Let it be enough that you are becoming stronger, kinder, more disciplined, even if no one ever says, "I see you." Because you see you, and that's what matters. Keep growing in the dark. Keep building when no one's clapping. Keep saying yes to the hard work that shapes your soul. Because one day, when it's time, the light will shine on what you've been working on in secret. And when it does, you won't have to scramble to become ready. You'll already be ready, because you've done the work that matters most, the kind that changes you first. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in life is to simply take ownership, to look at your life, your choices, your habits, and your direction, and say, "This is mine." Not in a selfish or controlling way, but in a responsible, grounded, mature way. Far too many people spend their lives waiting for someone to rescue them, to validate them, to open doors for them, or to change the circumstances around them. But nothing truly transforms until you do. The moment you take ownership is the moment you shift from being a victim of life to being a steward of it. And that shift changes everything. We live in a culture that teaches us to blame. We blame our parents, our past, our environment, our boss, our spouse, even God. Anyone and anything that gives us a reason to stay stuck. But the truth is, blaming may make you feel better for a moment, but it will never help you grow. Blame is a barrier to breakthrough. As long as you blame someone else, you're giving away your power to change. You're saying, "I can't move forward unless they do." But the truth is, you don't need their permission. You don't need their apology to begin healing. You don't need their understanding to become who you're called to be. You need your own decision. Responsibility is not about guilt, it's about empowerment. It's not saying that everything that's happened to you was your fault, but it is saying that you get to choose what happens next. And that's a powerful place to live from. Because the moment you stop waiting and start owning, you begin to realize just how much authority you already have. You don't have to keep living the same cycles, thinking the same thoughts, or repeating the same mistakes. You can interrupt those patterns. You can start showing up differently. You can choose differently, think differently, respond differently, and those choices create a new future. When you take responsibility, you start asking better questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of, "Who's to blame?" you start asking, "How can I grow from this?" You move from reaction to reflection, from helplessness to wisdom. And that's when life starts to feel less overwhelming and more intentional. Even if your situation doesn't change overnight, you change. And that's what makes all the difference. Owning your life doesn't mean controlling everything. It means owning what's yours. Your time, your attitude, your boundaries, your healing, your purpose. It means you stop waiting for someone else to set the tone for your day. You wake up with intention. You speak life over yourself. You walk with clarity and conviction, even if you're still figuring things out. Because progress doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence. from showing up again and again in your own life. One of the most freeing moments is when you stop asking others to do what you're not willing to do for yourself. Stop waiting for someone else to affirm you if you're not affirming yourself. Stop expecting loyalty from people if you're not being loyal to your own values. Stop demanding support if you're not even showing up fully for your own dreams. When you begin to live like you matter, everything else starts to shift. Not because other people change, but because you do. Taking ownership also means setting boundaries. It means recognizing when something is costing your peace, your time, or your integrity, and choosing to address it. You can't blame others for how they treat you if you never speak up. You can't resent the outcomes you're tolerating. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. So if you want respect, start by respecting your own voice. If you want peace, stop compromising with chaos. If you want purpose, stop entertaining distractions. It starts with you. Responsibility also shows up in the little things: how you spend your day, how you treat your body, what you speak over your life. These aren't minor details. They're daily decisions that shape your destiny. No one else is responsible for how you use your time. No one else is responsible for how you feed your soul. No one else can heal what you keep ignoring. It's not about perfection, but about awareness, about being intentional with your moments instead of drifting through them. When you take ownership of your journey, you no longer wait to feel ready. You start moving anyway. You don't need every answer before you take the first step. You just need to decide that staying stuck is no longer an option. You don't wait for clarity. You create it through action. You don't need the fear to disappear. You just need the courage to walk through it. That's the difference between living passively and living powerfully. Passive people hope for change. Powerful people choose it. Taking responsibility is the most radical act of self-love. It says, I'm worth the effort. I'm worth the work. I'm worth the discomfort of growth. You may not control everything that happens to you, but you control how you respond, and in that response lies your power. In that response lies your future. Every time you choose accountability over excuses, ownership over blame, and purpose over passivity, you become stronger, wiser, and freer. You become the person who doesn't just wish for change. You create it.